Our senior political reporter, Ziyanda Ngcobo, was at Latuli House. She joins us now. Ziyanda, good afternoon to you. So those are the number for the position of leader. It seems that one candidate's in a strong position compared to the others.
Yeah.
The position for deputy president is very interesting.
Very interesting because, Stephen, you'll remember that there were so many names that were touted. Thandi Modise, Senzo Mkhulu, Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, amongst a few. And of course, including Ronald Lamola, who's now been nominated. I think his numbers, he got 427. Paul Mashatile has seemingly been the strongman for the longest of times at 1,791, and Oscar Mabuyane at 397. What's very critical for me here is that David Mabuza, who's the incumbent deputy president, is nowhere to be seen, and he's the only incumbent from the previous top six, the 2017 top six, not to have been nominated by the branches again. But as we know, as history would have taught us, that David Mabuza is not to be underestimated. Whether or not this means that move to nominate from the floor, where you'll need 25% of the entire conference to be able to meet the threshold, if that's the plan, we'll hear. But let's listen to what Kgalema Motlhante had to say earlier.
With regards to position of deputy president, we have three names that have been successfully nominated, audited, and consolidated. So, for Comrade Paul Mashatile, the tally is 1,791. 1,791. And for the next name, which is Ronald Lamola, the total tally is 427. And for Comrade Oscar Mabuyane, tally is 397.
And Ziyanda, if you look at the numbers, I mean, it really shows that Mashatile has support from most of the provinces across the country. And that's really his strength here, isn't it?
It has been a strength, so much so that many have accused him of actually benefiting unduly so by being the acting Secretary General of the organization. Of course, there hasn't been any evidence to back this claim, but this is the perception internally within the organization. But I wonder then, Stephen, if the reports of him, KwaZulu-Natal sort of actually now reconsidering its support for him, whether or not that will have a material impact at the conference itself, given the fact that I believe that the real conversations are going to begin today, Stephen. The temperature has sort of been now read via these nominations, and I think the real backroom horse trading will begin from today. If you look at also the numbers, it's not necessarily, the slates that have been touted for Renew 22 or for that of Dr. Zweli Mkhize. None of those slates have come out in terms of the numbers, have reflected completely in this. But what will also be important about this conference is how the rules that have been set up by the Electoral Committee are seeming to be are put in place to sort of mitigate against factional politics. But this issue of vote buying that has long been reported. So, for an example, none of the delegates are allowed to stay in a hotel sponsored by any of the prospectives or have food bought for them. So Kgalema Motlhante was basically explaining today why this would be happening. Let's listen to what he had to say.
There's nobody who's allowed to pay for any expenses for the delegates whatsoever. Going to conference, you can't pay accommodation, you can't pay registration fees, you can't pay for food, you can't buy them alcohol, you can't do anything. So we want to avoid a situation where people use money to manipulate the outcome of the conference through favoritism and dispense patronage.
Ziyanda Ngcobo, our senior political reporter here in our Joburg studio. Thank you very much indeed.